Chapter 3 Initiation. Izuku talked to Bahadur for a few minutes and was able to explain the situation. Izuku explained the whole, "I fought you while you were under control or something," as well as explained events that led up to their meeting, such as Izuku's encounter with Grimm and the system. Another major thing Izuku explained was how his world worked. He talked about heroes and the license system, as well as how Izuku wanted to rid the world of all the corrupt heroes. Bahadur listened intently to Izuku even though Izuku was just a child. Bahadur knew that a child would have no reason to lie about this and somewhat trusted him. "I think I understand now, but what will you do now?" asked Bahadur. "Well, I am not that sure myself. The difficulty of the dungeon wasn't that crazy, but it was only because you were holding back. Besides, the monsters themselves were also pretty powerful. Even though now I am stronger, I don't think I could put up much of a fight without relying on Grimm," said Izuku. "Well, I guess you could say that we should start with finding you some new clothes and gear. Rags don't look good on a hero," said Izuku. Bahadur chuckled a bit and nodded. "Yes, I never thought I would wear rags again after being bestowed the title of hero. But here I am." Bahadur gave out one last chuckle. Izuku couldn't help but give out a slight smile. "How long has it been since I talked to someone like this?" thought Izuku before opening the shop window. "Oh, what is that?" asked Bahadur. "You can see it. Well, think of it like a shop of sorts, but everything is fresh and you get your items instantaneously," said Izuku. Izuku looked through the shop. He was currently wearing C-rank gear, so his range was to stay between E rank or D rank. Since C rank was pretty expensive. "Okay, I think I got something. Take a look at this, Bahadur." Bahadur leaned over and saw what Izuku wanted to get for him. 1000 P D rank, light iron armor. Description: iron plating that protects the major blind spots of the body, but thanks to that it is very lightweight, meaning it doesn't slow down the wearer. Plus 10 speed. 1000 P E rank, iron longsword. Description: a simple longsword made of iron. It is said to be the basic weapon of most warriors. Plus 5 strength. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything more similar to your original armor or sword that wasn't expensive as shit," said Izuku. "Is something wrong? I just have not gotten used to a child using such vulgar words, but it seems I will need to get used to it," said Bahadur. "I think it's perfect for me. I thank you once again, not only for giving me another chance at life but also some gear so that I could survive in this new world." Izuku smiled and said, "No need to thank me. I saw your potential and took a chance, and so far I don't regret it." Bahadur put on his armor and equipped his sword. The armor came with a blue cloak and some dashes of yellow on the iron itself. Izuku assumed it was a way for the craftsman to make the iron appear like gold to sell it at a higher price, but that was just his guess. Izuku noticed how the outfit complemented Bahadur's hair and eye color. The blue cloak that wrapped around him matched his blue eyes quite well. And the shining armor matched almost perfectly with Bahadur's hair. Izuku was pretty proud of himself, for his fashion sense was on point. The sword was probably as long as Bahadur's entire arm, from shoulder to middle finger. But thanks to it being only an E-rank item, even he could carry it with ease. "So what do you think? Perfect, right?" asked Izuku, giving Bahadur a curious gaze. "Absolutely," shouted Bahadur. "Okay, so now it is time to come up with a plan on how I am going to explain your existence to the others," said Izuku, rubbing his fingers on his chin. "Others?" said Bahadur, giving a shocked look. "And who might this be?" Izuku and Bahadur both looked to the source of the voice, and it was Kurogiri. He just finished cleaning up and now saw a man with armor and Izuku standing there. Kurogiri would have killed this strange man instantly if he didn't see Izuku there, unafraid of the man. "Hey Kuro, I have some news. I figured out my quirk," shouted Izuku. Izuku explained his quirk to Kurogiri. He didn't go into too much detail about it and excluded the parts about the Grim Reaper but kept most of the information. Izuku explained skills, dungeons, shops, and levels to Kurogiri. Meanwhile, Bahadur was sitting on the couch since he heard most of this stuff already. I see, so it is like those video games kids play, right? Asked Kurogiri. Well, if you wanna put it that way then, yes, said Izuku. So this man here was dead, but you brought him back? Asked Kurogiri. Yes, so now he and I are buds, I guess. But besides that, I have a question, said Izuku. Can he stay? Kurogiri stayed silent, then he spoke. Well, since Master Shigaraki has started to look for members for his own group, I don't see why you can't, said Kurogiri. Yes, alright Bahadur, it seems like me and you are now officially working together, shouted Izuku, while turning over to Bahadur. I am in your hands now, Izuku, said Bahadur, giving a slight bow. Now I am in a good mood. Since you are already geared up, how about we clear a dungeon together, said Izuku. It would be my honor, said Bahadur. Dungeon create. Defeat the Goblin King Gabiru. The faster the clear, the better the rewards. So I forgot to ask. What are your abilities? Asked Izuku. Well, I guess you should have asked that before, but I too was caught in the moment. Anyways, where I am from, quirks don't exist. Magic does. Magic varies from person to person, but I specialize in light magic. Izuku looked around and saw that there were flames everywhere. He felt like he was in hell being punished for killing his parents. But he snapped back to reality. Okay, I understand, so I guess our current goal right now is to find the Goblin King. We can decide what to do from there, said Izuku with a straight face. Izuku and Bahadur were speeding past any goblins and completely slaughtered any that were in their way. These goblins were only level 27. Izuku could believe that a boss was at this level not that long ago. After causing a scene and wreaking havoc on the poor goblins, they finally saw it. The Goblin King. LV-45 Goblin King Gabiru. Speed 297. Strength 442. Stamina 325. Mana 201. Intelligence 194. Agility 300. Race Goblin. He seems pretty strong, remarked Izuku. What's it level? Asked Bahadur. 45, said Izuku. Well, this isn't going to be easy, but I am pretty confident we can both pull this off, said a confident Bahadur. Izuku smiled and signaled for them to split up. On my signal we both charge, got it, said Izuku. Yes, I will wait for your signal, said Bahadur as he darted off. Izuku waited a while, then, while Gabiru had its back turned, he gave the signal. Bahadur charged forward and the Goblin King noticed him immediately and charged at him as well. Bahadur jumped up high and formed beams of light using magic and shot them at the Goblin King's legs to stun him. Izuku appeared from behind Gabiru and tried to decapitate it, but he knew it probably wouldn't, so he used the same trick that he used against Baru. He called the F-bomb as a pun since it actually stood for fire bomb. But it could be mistaken as fucking bomb or just the word fuck itself. The Goblin King's left arm was blown off and immediately switched focus onto Izuku. But when Gabiru did, it was struck by light beams, so it decided to go for the ranged attacker first. Izuku started to use fire bending as a way to hit Gabiru from mid-range since there was fire everywhere. It left burn marks, but it didn't slow down Gabiru and he was able to get close to Bahadur. Which would be the last thing Gabiru would do, as now Izuku and Bahadur got into a close-range battle with Gabiru. Izuku and Bahadur were in perfect sync. They covered one another's mistakes, which led to them having no blind spots. Gabiru was also pretty slow, which meant this battle would soon meet its end. Gabiru finally reached exhaustion and fell face first onto the ground. Both Izuku and Bahadur were breathing heavily as they underestimated Gabiru's resistance. Well, that was a good fight. You would have won if it were just one of us. I wish you luck in the afterlife. And with that, Izuku raised his scythe and decapitated Gabiru, completing the quest. All that just for shitty items. I hate my luck, said Izuku. Well, I say this was a good way for us to learn about each other's fighting style. Might I say that your style reminds me of someone I knew, said Bahadur. And who would that be? asked Izuku, curious to know more about Bahadar's past. A wild barbarian, said Bahadur. You son of a bitch, shouted Izuku. While Bahadur started laughing hysterically. So how did it go? Asked Kurogiri. Wait, how long were we gone? Asked Izuku. About 5 seconds, said Kurogiri. Oh, well it went great. Even though the boss monster itself was higher than us in level, we still beat it, said Izuku. Yes, we both fought bravely, said Bahadur. You fucker, you aren't off the hook just yet, shouted Izuku. Bahadur turned towards Kurogiri and whispered, pray for me. Kurogiri gave a pitiful look and nodded. Rumor has it that Izuku's screams of anger that day could be heard all over the world. Chapter 3.5 Report. Kurogiri entered a room that was pitch black and the only things in said room was a table and on top of it a TV. Kurogiri shut the door behind him and after doing so the TV lit up and it showed a man. Greetings AFO, said Kurogiri. Yes, thank you, responded AFO. How is it over there in America? Questioned Kurogiri, trying to start a conversation. It is going very well, these heroes are very easy to bargain with. Just show them some cash and they keep their mouths shut. It disgusts me. Back on point, is it not time for the weekly report, said AFO. Izuku and Bahadur have stopped resting and are now going through dungeons as we speak. I assume they have both cleared about 50 now, said Kurogiri. Wait, doesn't Izuku need to be the one to open it? Asked AFO. Well I thought so too, but apparently as long as you're holding it it should still open, said Kurogiri. Continue, said AFO. Tamura is currently looking for members to join his League of Villains group. He started to rush through it due to Izuku already finding a member for his own group. Ah yes, I forgot to ask. What is Izuku's group's name? Asked AFO. Izuku said that he needs more time to think about it as he doesn't want to regret the name later. Responded Kurogiri. I remember my first team name. I do regret it to this day. That boy is smart for wanting to think about it first, said AFO while grinning. Okay, continue. That is all, said Kurogiri. Well then I will talk to you next week, said AFO. Yes, I thank you for your time AFO, said Kurogiri, while bowing. Kurogiri waited for the room to go dark again before lifting his head and leaving the room. He just closed when he heard a voice. What the fuck? Why? Kurogiri ran over to see what the problem was. He saw Izuku about to rip his hair off and Bahadur on the couch looking depressed. Kurogiri was confused and asked, What is the matter Master Midoriya? Izuku looked up to see Kurogiri and said, Well you see, Bahadur and I finally reached level 50. At that point we were able to easily clear D-rank dungeons, but that meant that we got less express per dungeon clear. So, we both decided to start a C-rank dungeon. After an hour it was done, but now we realized we can't do it. Kurogiri looked confused and asked, Why? We need to reach a certain level before we can enter the C-rank dungeon, said Izuku. Well I see how that would be a problem, so what is the required level? Asked Kurogiri. It is level 100 inches, responded Izuku. Is that supposed to be hard to reach? Asked Kurogiri. Yes, shouted both Bahadur and Izuku. I don't know how long that could take us. Especially since we barely get any express from D ranks now, shouted Izuku. Well Bahadur, let's get to clearing these dungeons, the sooner we start the sooner we finish, said Izuku. Yes, you are right, shouted Bahadur in response. I wonder how long it will take them, thought Kurogiri as he left the room to let them focus, and just like that years passed. Chapter 4 We Can Rest at Dawn. Izuku is now 13 years old, about 5 or so years have passed. For the first 2 months Izuku and Bahadur constantly went through dungeons. At least about 50 per day, but after that they only made it to level 55. This caused them to decide to take things slow. Izuku also used this chance to learn how to use other weapons, whether it be from Bahadur or even some of AFO allies. Izuku managed to learn a few weapons such as the sword, spear, axe, and bow. Bahadur did learn new things along with Izuku but also trained in his magic, but since no one had a quirk to simulate magic, Bahadur had to teach himself and learn new things. Things did happen outside of their training. They met important figures like Overhaul, and a few potential recruits for the League of Villains, most of them they only saw once. Izuku also was currently saving up coins to be able to purchase Bahadur's weapon, but he was not even halfway there. 10 million is a lot. Bahadur even told Izuku that he doesn't need his sword since he is already really strong. Izuku said that he wants Bahadur to be at his peak so that nothing could stop them. Eventually Bahadur gave in to Izuku's determination. Izuku also named their group the Black Cross since it didn't sound too edgy but still sounded somewhat evil. It's also a way better name than the League of Villains. Such a name is way too simple, said Izuku while shouting the League of Villains part to spite a white-haired teen. Izuku and Bahadur were only about a week's worth of dungeon clears to reach level 100. But they knew that they should be at least a few levels above it in order to have a fighting chance. So they decided to clear several hundred starting Monday. At the end of the week their stats looked like this. LV 113 Bahadur. Speed 2558. Strength 2613. Stamina 2576. Mana 2208. Intelligence 2160. Agility 2531. Race Human. LV 112 Izuku Midoriya. Speed 2299. Strength 2233. Stamina 2267. Mana 3582. Intelligence 3273. Agility 2317. Race Human. Points 1,437,736. Izuku mainly focused on his magical-related abilities while doing some physical training here and there. Bahadur couldn't train his magic as well without a guide and hit a wall which he couldn't overcome. But his physical training and sparring was doing incredibly well. The only people they could spar and have mock battles with was one another. But then again, no one could keep up with them, unless the person was absurdly powerful, then there was no hope for challenge. This doesn't mean that they were unbeatable. It just means that quirkless humans can't keep up. Quirkless people are averaging level 50 while those with quirks vary greatly. But All Might would probably be somewhere in the 500s. Izuku and Bahadur decided it was finally time to enter their first C-rank mission. They realized that the dungeon had a minute-to-day ratio, which meant that 1 day in a dungeon was only 1 minute here. They wondered how long they would be gone in real life. So they asked Kurogiri to set up a stopwatch and start it as soon as they left. Kurogiri nodded and waited. They already had the dungeon made in advance. It was the same they tried to enter all those years ago, but now they were finally ready to enter the dungeon. Open. They both said it at the same time, and at that moment Kurogiri pressed the stopwatch to start the timer. When Izuku and Bahadur looked around they only saw barren land with dead trees sporting the place. This could be like the D-rank dungeon where they were in the future. Izuku and Bahadur walked in one direction for a while, so Bahadur wanted clarification once more. "Are you sure you didn't get a quest for this place?" asked Bahadur. "Yes, I already answered your question 6 times. This is a C-rank dungeon. We should expect things to be a little weird," responded an irritated Izuku. "Yeesh, my bad for asking," muttered Bahadur. "Hey you two." Izuku and Bahadur immediately turned around about to attack, but then they saw what was calling them. It was humans. "Don't you know how dangerous this place is?" asked one of the men, who seemed to be a knight. "No, I would like to apologize but we are amnesiacs so we don't remember much of anything," responded Izuku to this knight. Bahadur knew what Izuku was going for so he also played along. "What he says is true, I don't remember anything except my name," said Bahadur. "I knew you would get the hint Bahadur," thought Izuku. The knights looked at each other and talked amongst themselves before the one who spoke earlier said, Well then follow us. We are heading back to our base camp anyway. We can find out what to do with you there. Okay, said both Izuku and Bahadur as they walked over towards them and followed. After about half an hour of walking they finally reached their destination. Don't make any sudden moves unless they do so first, whispered Izuku to Bahadur. I know, responded Bahadur. Captain Frederick. I brought 2 people here who claim to be amnesiacs, said a knight. Let them in, a voice rang out. When Izuku went inside he saw a man with gray hair and beard wearing white and yellow armor that shined. He couldn't tell what the armor was made of but it looked pretty sturdy. The well-built man then asked, a child and a man, with a confused look. Yes, Captain Frederick. Me and my squad were out on patrol when we saw these 2, and they claimed to be amnesiacs, responded the knight. Frederick looked over at them and asked, your names are? Izuku, Bahadur, they both respond quickly. Well, do you know what's happening around the world? Asked Frederick. Izuku and Bahadur nodded their heads. No, which led Frederick sighing and saying, about 3 decades ago, Dracula appeared and claimed he would take over the world. You 2 are currently on an island where Dracula resides. Izuku and Bahadur processed this information, when Bahadur asked a question. Well, whose base is this? Is this place a fort that is trying to stop Dracula? You my friend are quick on the uptake, said Frederick. He continued, this is a base run by the clan, Twilight, which is I guess, subdivision on the faction known as the Pure Syndicate. There are a total of 6 different factions each with 2 clans. Even though the goal was to try to kill Dracula, some of the factions are currently at war due to accusations and betrayal. But I won't bore you with that. So you mean to tell me that when there is a very clear villain to be slain, humans are still fighting for petty reasons? Questioned Bahadur. Sorry, but that's pretty much it, responded Frederick. All of a sudden a knight opened the tent and shouted, Sir. It's almost nightfall. Well, that's my cue. Alright, you 2 wait here. We can continue our discussion when I return, said Frederick to Izuku and Bahadur. Wait, what happened? Shouted Izuku. It's something you 2 should not worry about, said Frederick as he left. Izuku and Bahadur sat there for 2 or so minutes before curiosity got the best of them. Izuku and Bahadur slowly crept outside the tent. They saw Frederick standing there in front of his fellow knights, staring ahead as the sun sets slowly behind him. When the sun finally disappeared behind the horizon, the moon shone brightly and a screech was heard. Izuku looked for the source of the noise. That was when Bahadur tapped his shoulder and pointed where Frederick was looking. When Izuku looked over he saw these humanoid figures running at Frederick. The underlings are here. Charge. Soon after Frederick said those words the knights behind him started attacking the underlings. Izuku used to observe to see that the underlings' levels varied between 70 to 80. Izuku looked at Bahadur and Bahadur gave Izuku a nod, so they ran over to the battlefield. Izuku used Reaper's best friend and started slicing away at the underlings. Izuku tried to keep his skill use limited as he didn't want to reveal anything to the other knights, since how their world worked could be different than here. He mastered how to use the scythe effect to a certain extent. With each swing he cut off the head of an underling. Bahadur was also restricting the use of light magic, since he didn't want to reveal any cards in the table. Bahadur used the sword skills he learned to stab and slice through multiple underlings rather quickly. The only reason Bahadur would stop was because underlings would stop approaching him, so he chased them instead. Captain Frederick, do you see that? Asked a knight while pointing to Izuku and Bahadur. Impossible. Were they perhaps part of a different faction before losing their memories? Muttered Frederick to himself. Frederick was comparing their skills to a person he knew, their commander. Frederick believed that his commander was strong, so he doubted anyone would win against them. But maybe these 2 could put up a good fight. I have to get them on our side, is what Frederick was thinking. He decided to try to convince them when they would talk after this wave. Once the sun raised the underlings started to turn back and run away, while the corpses of the dead ones slowly burned to ash. Victory is ours, shouted Frederick, as a way to inspire his knights. After a feast to regain their strength, Izuku and Bahadur found themselves, once again, in the captain's tent. "What do you boys think about joining the Pure Syndicate?" asked Frederick, who wanted to get straight to the point. "Sure, I don't see why not," said Izuku. It was true. There was really no reason for him to not join. He hasn't received a quest from the system. In the end, doing random things until he received his quest was the best thing to do. Said Bahadur, before he continued. "Why should I? Always cautious thought Izuku. Izuku knew how careful Bahadur was when it came to making decisions that would affect him. Bahadur wanted to make sure it was safe and there was no catch at all. "Well, we here at the Pure Syndicate vow to take down Dracula and put a stop to his plans," said Frederick. "Does starting a war with other factions count towards this cause?" asked Bahadur. "Kuhum." Frederick clears his throat. "Aren't you quick to seek information?" "Well, nonetheless, yes, we did start the war, but it wasn't to just cause trouble. We know for a fact that the Ravenblades and the Fearless Berserkers are working with Vlad Dracula. We just need the evidence to prove it." "How are you so sure?" asked Bahadur, raising an eyebrow at him. "Well, we received information from a spy a while back, but the spy was found out and killed. So they couldn't bring any evidence with them, and before you ask, this spy was a trustworthy person. They wouldn't lie, and I know that for a fact," said Frederick. "Well, I am still going to ask it anyway. Can you trust this spy of yours?" asked Bahadur. "Of course I would, she was my daughter after all," responded Frederick. The feeling in the air was awkward to say the least. Bahadur sat there in silence before trying to apologize. That was when Frederick let out a laugh. "No need to apologize, I can understand why you were so suspicious of us in the first place. It is rather easy to trick amnesiacs to join you, but if you insist, you can apologize by joining us in the fight against Dracula as a member of the Pure Syndicate." Bahadur got up and stretched his hand out for a handshake. "I look forward to working with you," said Bahadur. Frederick got and shook his hand. He smiled and said, "Same here."